So we're gonna get started. We will introduce ourselves, but first we're gonna start with Harry Potter. How many of you are familiar with Harry Potter? Thank you, thank you. If you're not, you may not, even if you are, you may not know what the connection with AI is, but we will get to that. But by way of intro, we wanna know which Harry Potter house you may be sorted into. And so for those who are not familiar, every first-year student who goes into Hogwarts gets to wear the sorting hat and gets sorted into one of 4 houses. You could think of them as dormitories. And so Gryffindor, you can associate with courageous people, standing up for others. Ravenclaw, curiosity, learning how things work. We have Hufflepuff, loyalty, kindness, community. I like to think of them as the ASB students. And Slytherin, associated with ambition, strategy, and big goals. So take a minute and in your tables, decide what house you may be sorted into. All right, so I heard some immediate responses. I'm gonna call out, you beautiful woman. You're a Hufflepuff? Immediate, right? Everyone, let's come together. Yeah, so some people immediately knew what house they would fall into. What is your name? Amanda immediately shouted out Hufflepuff, and that's why I called on her. Did anyone not know? We have someone back there. Do you want to share a little bit? Do we have another mic? Do I have to run? Got it, thank you.
Oh.
You said you didn't really know what house you fell into?
Yes. Just speak into it. Hi, Marisol. I didn't know because I could see various aspects of many of these houses in myself. I really love like the ambition and big goals and loyalty and then curiosity and who doesn't love courage and, so I can imagine a constellation of these.
Yeah, I saw that one in myself too. And then some people might have felt themselves in maybe 2 houses at the same time. I know I actually took the quiz and I'm Ravenclaw, but I always wanted to be Hermione, so I wasn't quite a Gryffindor, but I went to Brown just like Emma Watson. And so today, very quick introduction. My name is Marisol. I'm currently a master's student in computer science.
My name is Hannah Groos, and I am a senior. I'm graduating tomorrow in computer science and psychology. Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alison. I work at the Rithm Project. I lead R&D at the Rithm Project. And we're so sad that Leo was supposed to be here with us. As you see, we were supposed to have a 4th speaker here. Leo just accepted his job to work here in San Francisco. He's also a recent graduate, but he got stuck in immigration. So he was trying to come here from Canada and got stopped. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us today, but hopefully he'll be here in the Bay Area soon. He's a brilliant young human being, and we're just missing his presence here.
Oh, and we were supposed to introduce our houses. I forget.
Yes, I am Ravenclaw.
I would say I'm a Gryffindor. Yep.
I think I'm a Ravenclaw with a Hufflepuff rising. Yeah.
And so you might wonder, what does Harry Potter have to do with this? We're talking about AI. Just like all the houses, through our research, we're gonna talk a little bit more about it, we did find that students fit into 9 different portraits. And so just like the houses, they may have fit into them pretty nicely. Some of them, you might get variants in between. And so we don't think that any of these portraits, like the houses, are good or bad. There's variance within any group, and so if you all remember, Hermione, Ron, and Harry could not be any more different, but they're all Gryffindor. And then we also want to emphasize that agency matters. Students who might fall into one portrait may realize that they can also kind of slide into another. They may decide that they want to be in another category. Just like Harry, when he first puts on the sorting hat, he says, not Slytherin, and the sorting hat listens. And so very quickly, gratitude to the Rithm Network. This study would not have been possible without the support of the Walton Family Foundation, so huge shout out to them. And so where we're heading, we're going to go through a journey. We're going to see the research. Hannah is going to help you dive into what the portraits mean. We're going to explore the distinct portraits that emerged. So 9 of them, if you take a look at your table, there are 9 different cards that you could look at into detail. And they're also really nicely illustrated. That was the work of Dave. Oh, not yet though. We're gonna go deeper together, and then we're gonna commit to action. So you all work with students. We want to be able to have you walk out of this room knowing what to do with young students. And so here's Hannah.
All right, so when we were asking this question around young people and their sense of human connection in the age of AI, we set out to approach it through a mixed methods approach. So we surveyed and partnered with YouGov to survey 2,383 young people between the ages of 13 to 24, and they were nationally representative in terms of race, gender, age, and their geography as well. And so when we surveyed them, we asked 2 big things. The first thing is, how are you using AI? Maybe sometimes you're using AI for school, but also, are there times where you're using it for emotional purposes or for personal purposes that are deeper than maybe ways you might be using it for schoolwork? And so we did this by asking questions around how are adults talking to you about AI, and also we asked them about their high-risk AI behaviors that could lead them to use AI more and more in ways that kind of take away from their well-being outcomes in the future. On the other side, we also asked about their sense of human connection. So how many friends do you have and family members do you have that you feel like you can talk to them? Are you involved in extracurriculars? Do you experience bullying in school? And a lot of other questions that help us get a sense of how connected these young people are and what their social biome looks like. And also, more importantly, we asked a set of questions that we co-constructed with young people around the safety of being able to connect. So the actual biome in which you are connecting with young people and with the adults in your lives. Because we were seeing from young people that they were telling us that it's really important for them to feel like they can be their real and unfiltered self with the people who support them in their daily life. And that it's important for them to feel like they're able to be vulnerable. And it's really important for them to not feel like they have to filter themselves or feel like a burden on others when they reach out to help from those family and those friends in their lives. So after the survey, we did a series of interviews with young people who were telling us that they were using AI for social and emotional purposes. They were using it to process their emotions and to get advice on relationships. And we did this with a smaller subset of young people. After that, then we took all of this data, all the things that we learned from these surveys, and we co-interpreted it with an intergenerational group of changemakers. So you can see on the bottom right-hand corner there, all of us sitting in the floor of the executive director's house, talking about the different ways in which we are making meaning of this research. So what did we find? The first thing that we found is that AI use emerges in 4 big clusters. So the first big cluster is 28% of young people who are using AI infrequently or never. The second cluster is young people who are using AI as a tool or for information, and that is 39% of young people. That's the biggest cluster out of everyone. So when you hear things in the news around everybody's using AI characters, 39% of young people are just using AI as a tool or for information. The third cluster is where it starts to get interesting. So these are young people, there's 18% of them, who use AI for personal and emotional support. So we clustered them into this cluster if they answered yes to one of the following questions. The first question is whether these young people were talking to AI about their emotions, whether they were venting to it about a bad day that they had, or asking it for advice on how to process a hard moment in their life. The other question that we asked that would put them into this cluster is around whether they were using AI to talk about relationship conflicts or to get advice about the relationships. So, for example, I could say, I have a crush on somebody, AI, what should I do about it? Or I'm in a fight with my parents. What do I do about this fight? How do I go about this fight in the best way possible? And then also, I'm having friend drama. How do I deal with it? How do I make sure that I'm not excluding anybody in my group? Or I can make sure that I'm protecting myself in this process. So these are a couple of the ways. If they answered yes to either of those questions around using it for personal advice, for relational advice, or for using it to process emotions, and they did so in the last month or more, then they fell into cluster 3. An important thing about the difference between cluster 3 and cluster 4 is that they had not yet talked to an AI character or an AI that is personified in any way. So that's the biggest difference between cluster 3 and cluster 4, which is 15% of young people. And these are the young people who talk to AI characters and personas. They answered yes to the question of, are you talking to an AI that has taken on the role of a character or a person in your life? So let's dive into what we found. Outside of the 4 different ways in which young people were using AI, we saw that they also differed in their social biomes. So for cluster 1, this is at 28% of young people who use AI infrequently or never. We found something really surprising, that this group was the group that had the most adverse experiences with loneliness and different well-being outcomes. They had the smallest group of family and friends that they felt that they can turn to for help. And this is very different than our hypothesis that the people who are using AI the most are the ones who are going to have the worst well-being outcomes and the highest rates of loneliness. But that just wasn't the case. And so we found that this is a group that has really high needs around well-being and around loneliness and social connection, but they're not getting those needs met either by humans or by AI. All right, moving on to cluster 2. This is, again, the largest group of young people. They use AI as a tool, and in a lot of ways, it's the complete opposite of group 1. So these young people have a fairly regular usage of AI, but they also have the strongest social lives and well-being outcomes across the study. Oopsies. Even though they have these very high rates of AI, they have some pretty clear boundaries between what they perceive AI is for and what humans are for. So they use AI weekly or more, but they also have these very clear boundaries that prevent them from using it in ways that may harm their well-being outcomes. So moving on to cluster 3, this is where it gets interesting. So this is a cluster that has very big feelings and has a lot of places to process them. So what is surprising about this group is that they do say that they have friends and family members that they can talk to about processing their emotions. And when they're processing these emotions, they're also processing their emotions more than any other group. So they're not just talking to their friends and family members about their emotions, they're really talking to AI a lot about their emotions. So 90% of them use AI weekly, and this is the highest use rate out of all the clusters in the study. So they're using AI a lot more frequently. The thing that we really want to be paying attention to for this group is the idea of reliance on AI and social displacement. So the question of, do you turn to AI more than people when you feel upset? This is where this group really spikes. 47% of them say that they do turn to AI more than people when they're upset, even though 54% of them say that they're processing their emotions with humans weekly, which is also the highest in the study. So again, the most distinct thing about this group is that they have really big feelings. They have lots of places to process them. They're processing them both with humans, but they're also increasingly processing them with AI. 47% of them are turning to AI more than people when they're upset. And then moving into cluster 4, this is my favorite cluster to talk about because they get a lot of hype and a lot of, honestly, what I would say hate in the media and a lot of fear around them. Because when people are talking about companionship in AI, they think of these AI characters and they get really scared because these are young people who are using AI that is specifically and explicitly personified in the role of a character or a person in their life. So the important things to know about this cluster is that they are also saying that they have some friends and family members that they can talk to about their relationships and their emotional problems. They were participating in extracurriculars, but they're also experiencing pretty high levels of adverse well-being and social anxiety outcomes. They also have the highest rates of high-risk AI use. So this is the answering yes to the question of, do you feel the urge to use AI more and more? 55% of them say yes to this, and they are using AI the highest of any cluster, or they have the highest response to that question of any cluster. So this can get us a lot of information around what does it mean when we start to turn to AI more and more and form a big habit with them. The final thing that I think is really important to look at is that 1 in 3 of these young people in this cluster really report feeling an emotional connection with AI. And so when you think of AI characters or a person that you have turned into an AI character, they've started to feel an emotional connection with AI. It's not just something that's in their head, but something that they really feel emotionally connected to. And so that could get us to be a little bit curious around what does it mean when we start to not only have connections with AI that are pretty surface level, but really dig deeper into this emotional level.
Okay, so you all just got a lot of information. And so I know this is a lot, and in a moment, you're actually going to be able to do a little bit more meaning making. Even though we initially bifurcated these clusters into 4 clusters by AI use, right? It was like, doesn't use AI, uses it as a tool, talks to it about emotions, or talks to AI characters. It's very easy to sort of like flatten and reduce young people just into those clusters just by their AI usage alone, right? And we saw these broad trends. We don't want to discount these broad trends, but we also wanted to dig a layer deeper. We realized that even if they're behaving in the same cluster, they might be coming at it for very different reasons or experiences or motivations. Just like in the same way that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are both all in Gryffindor, but they all are very different people with very different lived experiences. And so what we did was we started to dig another layer deeper. That's what we were doing on the floor, all together, digging into this data together, was to say, even if a group of young people were behaving with AI in the same way, how might we start to examine how even those might be different? And so in a moment, before I hear the Velcro, you're gonna dig into those portraits. But I'll give you an example of how those things bifurcate. What we found were 9 portraits across all these different clusters. So you'll see cluster 1 has two portraits. Cluster 2 also splits into 2 groups. Cluster 3 also splits into 2 groups. And cluster 4, interestingly, split into 3 groups. So you'll dig into why these make a lot of sense once you dig into the portrait cards. But I'll give you a moment to actually look at them. I'll explain in a minute why we split by these outcomes. So for example, I'm waiting for you to take the picture. There we go. Okay. For example, in cluster 1, this was the group of young people that were saying they do not use AI. They either use it less than once a month or they've never used it before. But we thought it might be interesting to ask the question, why? Why are you not using AI? And when we dug into that question, what we found were some pretty profound differences in what compelled them to act in the same way. On the left-hand side, you see the conscious abstainer. This was 55% of cluster 1. These are the young people that were saying, I don't trust AI. I don't like it. I think it's bad for the environment. I don't think it's bad for me. I think it's bad for the world. I'm an artist and I think it's messed up for us. Or I don't trust these companies, right? They gave us a number of values-based reasons why they were intentionally choosing not to use AI. That's very different from the second group, who we called the AI non-participant. This group of young people were saying, instead of just being like, I reject it completely, they were like, well, I don't really know how to use it, or I don't have access to it, or I'm not really sure how it would help me. And so rather than explicit refusal from a place of agency, rather it was a question of access, a question of being able to access the environments that would actually help them make that intention-based choice, whether it's the choice to use it or otherwise. And what we found was even when we split by these reasons, they also started to vary by social outcome. Conscious abstainers on the whole were saying that, listen, I'm choosing not to use AI, but 66% of them said, I can be real and unfiltered with my friends, right? That's pretty high. And only 9% of them said they never have anyone to turn to. So you can think of it the inverse, like 92% said, I have someone I can turn to. When we look at those same measures on the inverse, right, what we see is a difference. About 47%, so a little bit less than half, said that they don't feel like they could be real or unfiltered with their friends. And 18% of them said they feel lonely often or all the time. And so not only are we seeing values-based reasons for this behavior, we're also seeing the conditions of their social biome that are also interacting with these sorts of access questions. And if you've worked with educators, if you're an educator, if you work with young people, this is probably not at all surprising to you, right? Our social conditions really shape the way that we show up in technologies. And so, in a minute, I will give you the option to really dig into the portraits. So I think we have, is it five minutes? 5 minutes, what I'm going to ask you to do, and if you're sitting in the back where there aren't any portrait cards, I invite you to come on up, because then you're not going to have these beautiful Pokemon cards, baseball cards, whatever you want to call them, to look at. So I'm going to invite you to spread these out on the table, and then to also look at them quietly to yourself for about 5 minutes. Is that right? 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah. 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 And the question you should be asking yourself is, which one do you relate to the most? Awesome. I didn't set the timer. You did? Okay, amazing. Hell yeah.
Can I be two things? If I know only cluster two,
Yeah.
can I be an intentional connection and
I think so. I mean, it's the same way that you might be like Ravenclaw and a little bit of both. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, sure. I would say that this like I have a minute, but yeah. Maybe you can answer the questions. Yeah. Okay, 1 more minute. So maybe 30 seconds. I kind of like don't remember whether or not we're supposed to pop out. Are we good? Yeah. All righty. Come on back. Come on back. I mean, I guess it's unfair of me to ask you to silently review something and then ask you all to look at the same artifact and sit at the same tables. But I love this. It means that people are excited about this. And so I hope you saw a little bit of yourself reflected in some of these portrait cards, that you were able to see like, oh, that is me. but also maybe that one too, right? And that's kind of the whole point, is to be able to see ourselves and see the humanity in sort of like every single one of these portraits, especially in a moment where I think much of the public narrative is all about sort of putting young people into a category or dismissing their experiences. So I hope you see yourself in some of these experiences. And now we're actually going to go into, what are we doing? Okay. And now that you've seen yourself in some of these portraits, I'm going to, in a moment, I'm going to send you to actually have small group conversations. But before we do that, I'm going to activate an empathy exercise. So many of us work in systems that touch the lives of young people, whether you're an educator, you're an after school, you're a career counselor, you work in a system that supports some of these systems that young people live in. I want you to think of a young person that exists in that system, maybe someone you directly touch or that you know of exists in your system. I want you to imagine that young person. You can look at me, you can look at the floor, whatever, or close your eyes. I want you to imagine what they look like in their day-to-day. I want you to imagine who are the people around them? Who are their friends like? Who might their families be like? What are their passions? What are their conflicts? And what might they be dealing with in this moment? And finally, I want to ask you, how might AI show up in their life? What is their access to it? What kinds of problems or challenges might they be bringing to it or not? And I want you to think about this young person and have them in the front of your brain as we dig into our small groups. Oh, I've been clicking the wrong button. Okay. So you're going to have about 7 minutes because we're already behind. In your groups, you're going to ask these 3 questions. Who is a young person you're picturing, and which portrait might they be? What strengths does this portrait bring? What are the assets that they have to bear? And what risks or challenges might they face? As you look at these portraits and you think about the motivations that young people bring to AI, what might be those challenges or risks? So hold these 3 questions. We'll put the timer on for about 7 minutes, and you're off. Okay, 3 more minutes.
Yeah. Are you talking about the gamer? Or are you talking about?
My 11, I would be like,
Yeah. No.
talking about my 11-year-old, but that I think he would probably cusp into a different category than he's in right now if
And
he
it-
craves it,
Yeah.
but I will not allow it
Yeah.
yet, and it's like, what's the benefit and curse of me putting that barrier on it right now, and what is it teaching him about, is he just going to over-dial once he has access? I think he's 2, mostly because they use it at school.
I think one of the reasons I really like this framework and talking about it, right, is just because you're in cluster 4 doesn't mean there's higher risk factors there, but it doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong. Like I don't know, my daughter's only 5, so she's not using AI yet. But like compared to me and my wife, she's a deeply feeling kid. She has lots of feelings, and it's like, okay, is this something she'll grow out of or she's gonna have? So I have other humans in my life that are deeply feeling people. This AI thing that helps you process in the future before like the whole kind of burden for other people. You can look at that as a negative, or it can be like, actually, this is how I go through the process. And then when I'm leaning into my human connections, I'm going to with a better sense of what I'm doing. So it just, I don't, I appreciate this because it's not like, oh, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. It's like, it's sort of a thing that you can use and you learn how to use it correctly.
Okay, come on back. Come on back. Marisol, Hannah, where are you? Come on back. Is this working? Is this on? Okay. I know, it feels terrible to bring you back because it feels like you're still in it. Hannah, Marisol. I see her in the back. Come back up. Okay. Okay. So maybe bring it back up to the big group. What surprised you or caused you to think about this in a different way? What was something new? Go ahead.
I really appreciated the invitation to find ourselves in many of these cards as opposed to sorting into one. Like we both had a very strong reaction initially to I am this category. And then as we read more deeply, we had moments of like, oh yeah, I do that. And when we thought about the young people in our lives, we were like, I totally see how they could end up sorting into a variety of these categories at different moments in their lives over time and having sort of like a fluid and changing relationship with a lot of these technologies.
Yeah, I love that. And I wonder also about how much people are shuttling between them, right? Like in any given moment, how much would you change? And also, we often think of like this concerning like trajectory from like cluster 1 to cluster 4. But when we talk to some young people from cluster 4, they were actually in cluster 4 in an effort to hack their AI to be less sycophantic, to be more boundaried, to be more like sort of like if I ask you to play the role of a career counselor, then you won't try to like glaze me up too much, right? And so it's a really interesting, it like totally changed the way that we thought about it and like how young people are sort of navigating this in loops and circles around. What else? What else might have surprised you or pushed your thinking?
I think in my group, what surfaced for us is how
The mic is go-
adults are using AI to navigate tensions in existing relationships, whether that's with a mother-in-law, that would be me. Just to give me some advice about how to respond, you know, in a way that's more diplomatic and empathetic. So, and then also seeing the ways in which it shows up in our kids. I agree with everything that you said. And then the last question that you had for us around risks or things that we're concerned about, for me, it's this one particular child just far too deeply into their AI relationship, and then how do we go into a conversation that's more asset-based to bring them back to human connections?
That's right. Like they're sort of already existing, like I'm struck every time I talk to young people with how much it ranges from like a gut impulse of mistrust of technology to like full-blown like criticality and discernment. But there's an impulse towards like, what are these tech companies doing to us, right? Or I don't trust it. I was thinking about like when I was 15, I was talking on like AOL with strangers. I had zero discernment, right? Right? So what does that mean for this, to like build on their assets towards criticality already, but also create space for that, right? I love that. Maybe one more. Maybe someone from two more. One in the back and then maybe one right here. Oh, over here. Great.
Okay, sorry. Hi, yeah, I'm Evan from the Young Data Scientists League. I'm a former data scientist turned educator. My friend Craig and I were just talking about how meaningful it was that we were kind of being prompted to think about young people in our lives, because I think the answer changes a lot based on what stage of life we're in. Like, when I was younger, I could have seen myself being more like a private processor. Nowadays, I'm more of like what was the abstainer one? I forget. Yeah, the conscious abstainer. Yeah. One anecdote I just want to share with the crowd is that I've worked with a couple young people who just in the process of like applying for the current job market, where they're feeling really anxious about the pressures of AI, but also the joys of being able to spin up web apps, even if you have no programming experiences. They end up encountering so much implicit bias against by race, gender, sexuality. So there's that kind of risk and concern about, well, how is this going to portray people from different groups, especially given the positionalities of the internet data that it was trained on and the people who are in charge of these tools. So I'm really interested in, how can we get young people in charge of these tools? And so I love that y'all are highlighting youth voices here.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think also I love the point around the different versions of ourselves that might have shown up in different places. And so what I hear in your story is that like there must have been a transformation process from who you were as a young person to who you are now, which I think calls to that last question, which is like, what do young people need to navigate AI, no matter where they are, right? Without casting judgment about good or bad, but like discernment and criticality, right? What are the skill sets or the things that they need to value in order to navigate all of this in support of their human connection and not an erosion of that? So I'm curious, maybe one last one that might be, yeah.
I think in having this conversation, and I often have this with myself, is at the end of the day, whatever tool it is, I think the biggest question for all of us, especially as we navigate it with the younger people, is what kind of support are we providing for them outside of this new world that they have. I think it's similar to when we started social media at a young age. What questions are we asking them so they don't go too much into the deep end of having these relationships and just being stuck in the rooms? And also for those who are on the opposite end where they're just against it, how do we bring up conversations that challenge that in order for them to see that this is actually useful for me? So I think at the end of the day, it's really providing that support and ensuring that on both ends, they're supported so that they don't fall into the trap of being so antagonistic that it doesn't support their growth, or being so into it that they forget that there is support outside of it. So I think that's the main thing that really spoke to me today.
I love that. It actually echoes one of the conversations we had at this table here around if young people are turning to AI in these moments of what we call like relational ruptures. Some of our interviewers were looking at like, what was the moment when you first started using AI? And it was almost unequivocally, all of them was like, I just had a moment of real need. It was like, I didn't get asked to homecoming and I feel unpretty and unlovable, or I got into a fight with my sister and am I the asshole or is she the asshole, right? Or like all of these moments where they're like, man, I just really need a place to put this. And so the question is like, what potentially made them reach for AI instead of another human being? Right? What does that say about us and the systems that whether it's the family systems or the school systems or the community systems? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Marisol to take us through some of the most crucial high-level takeaways that we found across all of these clusters.
Yes.
So just like Ali said, these are high-level takeaways, but you can really dive into the report. But we want to get started with, a lot of you have seen the headlines, and we believe that public discourse is likely overestimating the amount of students engaged with companions. So you might see that people are falling in love with AI, they're marrying AI. We do believe that that number may be overestimated in the media. However, we also think that the amount of relationships that are being reshaped by AI is underestimated. And so if you go back to what Hannah said, some of us are asking AI, how do I get over a crush? I did that last week. He's a coworker. So enough about me. A lot of these kinds of questions are happening, but they don't fall into cluster 4. And so that number is probably a lot greater than what we're seeing, but some students are just trying to emotionally process using AI, but that doesn't make the headlines. You know, headlines are getting married to AI, falling in love with a replica who is marketed as your, virtual soulmate. Another. When AI use turns personal and intimate, so when you start talking about emotions, when you bring feelings into the conversation, you're 5 times more likely to substitute human relationship. And so let's not even look at the numbers, let's look at the colors. Cluster 1, these are the people that do not use AI, or they use it very infrequently. So the survey specifically asked maybe once a month. We have that green sliver. It is not a non-zero number. Non-users, even if they're using it once a month, can still turn to AI instead of human relationships. No, cluster number 2, the tool users, they use it for maybe translating. They will still turn to AI. Cluster 3 and 4 is where it starts getting more personal and intimate. We see a large jump. Look at that green. Cluster 3, personal and emotional offloading occurs. Cluster 4, they're the ones that give it a name. They're the ones that might give it a role. Increase a much larger number will often or all the time turn to AI instead of humans. We asked questions that kind of went into 3 different topics. You know, are you displacing humans? You know, are you increasingly dependent on AI? Are you getting really attached to AI? This is what we call high-risk behavior or high-risk AI use. It's not just about relationships. It's not about how many friends you have. And a lot of you may think, duh, but we're connecting it to AI now. It is not about the number of friends you have, because you can still feel alone in a room full of people. It is about the quality of those relationships. Do you feel seen? Do you feel heard? And do you feel like you matter? That is the biggest protection against high-risk AI use. If you feel like you belong inside of your friend group, you're probably not going to depend on AI. Take a look at this. This is the slide. This explains why I personally study AI. So I am from a low-income community. 1 in 4 students in my elementary school was homeless. And so youth from low-income households face 2 gaps. And so just imagine a seesaw inside of a ditch. They're 3 times less likely to engage with AI. Imagine what that means in a tech-infused world. And they're also report greater vulnerability across measures of connection and well-being. So if we just take a look at what some of these stats say. Do you have 3 or more close friends? Low-income students report less. Do you feel like you belong in school? Nearly half of what high-income students feel. And so we're already facing difficulty with our human relationships, and we don't even have access to AI. We're not saying AI is a solution, but even then, we're falling behind. And so a lot of that was very gloomy, but there are some bright spots. So if you take a look, 53% of young people in our study report setting boundaries with AI. So our study, just a reminder, was done with youth between the ages of 13 and 24. They're already setting rules with AI. No one taught them how to do this, but they're already trying to bring values into their conversations, or they may be using AI alongside human connection, alongside human relationships. So for example, I always like to make it not abstract. I might use AI to tell me how to network at an event like this. But my intention is to speak to humans, just maybe not stutter as much as I usually do. And just so you know, I practiced this presentation yesterday with Claude for an hour. I used voice mode. So again, it's trying to get these points across. We're using it alongside human connection. And so a lot of them, We're already seeing that they're setting boundaries. But so many of us, I'm including myself because I'm still 23, we're navigating it alone. My parents do not know what AI is. 61% of our surveyed youth said that their parents rarely or never talk to them about AI. 53 said the same for their teachers. So just imagine, this is being infused in education in nearly all the industries. Not a lot of conversation is happening, and those that are happening have to do with academics and with cheating. You know, if we bring up the conversation in schools, are you cheating? We have a zero tolerance policy. If we find you using AI, you automatically get a 0. And so very little of these conversations touch the relational dimension of AI use, which is what we hope to bring up in this study. And so all of these insights brought us to 3 truths that we would like for you all to walk away with. The first one is curiosity. As people that are working with these students, be curious and don't build off of your assumptions. These students don't want to be judged, but it's very easy to do so in such a fast-paced tech world. If you're using AI for therapy, you have no friends. I wouldn't want to talk to you about it. So number 1, be curious.
The second thing is to be precise. So be really clear and specific about how AI is used, by whom it's being used, and with what impact it is being used. So we call this pushing the beach ball down. Don't let it fly up into the clouds. Be really clear and specific about how young people are using AI, because the more specific and precise that you are, the better use and outcomes you're going to be able to have around policy, decision making, and any actual changes that you want to have around how young people are using AI.
And I think the last one is accountable, which seems fitting for me as a fellow adult, as a fellow oldie, is as people in this room, just by being in this room, we have immense power and positionality to exert pressure and to lead differently in the systems that we serve. And so one of the big questions that we like to ask rooms like this is, what are the choices that we can make to recenter human connection right now? And whether that is helping young people feel like they can be real, feel like they belong, feel like they can ask for help, or develop the discernment and the criticality that's required to navigate this technology. When is this actually in service of my growth and my development? And when might this be in threat of that, right? And so being really able to say, we actually have agency in all this. We can own our choices and redesign the systems and safeguards that we need as adults and also our young people. Do you want to lead us in some reflections after this?
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that I really hope that you all take away from today is that this conversation should definitely not just stay in this room. And I want to make this an invitation for you all to bring this conversation back to the communities that you're a part of, so that you're able to spread the word and host these conversations in the communities or organizations that you're a part of. Because for me, what I find is really beneficial about this is that I feel heard and seen when I'm talking about the ways in which AI is showing up in my own life, when I'm using resources by Rithm. And when I talk about the ways in which AI is showing up in my life, I see the data. I feel like I have a lot more control and agency over that. So if you're interested in bringing this conversation back to your own organization, you can go to our website, therhythmproject.org/research. I know I was just talking with Evan around how can I bring this conversation back to his students at the Young Data Scientists League so that they can work through this data in their own way. There's a conversation guide so that you can bring this exact conversation back to your organizations. You all have the AI Effect card game. These cards that are in the middle of your table are available for free online that you can print them off. And we'll also have some nicer ones that are printable that you all can get for your organizations in the future as well. So after you think about spreading the word, I really want to invite you all into a moment of reflection. So we've shared a lot of data with you. There's a lot more data to dig through online in our research report, but let's just do a final drop. So you can turn to the person next to you and just pick one thing to think about before you go. What is a commitment that you want to make as a result of what we talked about here today? What is a question that you're still sitting with, maybe that you want to investigate with more young people in your life or more of the educators in your life? And then what's a learning? One thing that you learned that might influence how you show up differently in your work in the future. So take a moment, just turn to the people next to you and share out one of those things. How much time do we have?
I don't know. Oh, 3:22. We have a lot of time.
Like 8 minutes?
We have 8 minutes. So maybe we could do like
We
a
got-
little popcorn out.
Yeah.
And then you can wrap us with Harry Potter. With the Dumbledore
Yeah.
slide.
Dumbledore. It is our choices, Harry, that show us what we are. You know how at the summit, or the R&D summit, I was trying to figure out how to bring this back to
We can't get the raw data.
Yeah, not the raw data, but just like have this conversation.
We literally on our website that you just named have this entire deck. We have the deck, we have the facilitator's guide, and we have the digital. So they could literally take a presentation and duplicate it.
Perfect. All right, y'all. Testing. Can y'all hear me?
Hello. Oh, here it is. Come on back. There you go.
All right, y'all, we got 5 minutes left. I'm not sure if this mic is on. Can you all hear me? Okay, perfect. We got 5 minutes. I want to hear your commitments, your questions, and your learning. Who is brave enough to raise their hand and share how they are moving forward with this work? I know y'all were sharing out some things. I don't know what it was, even if it seems irrelevant. I'm sure it was relevant.
So I guess we do software that has a lot of AI in it, and I guess the thing we never thought about doing was being really clear to people of exactly how it's being used. And I think that was just something that struck me, that there's real value in. I mean, I think it's going to keep expanding what AI can do, and probably these categories will jump from 9 to 90 in the next couple of years as people go down different categories. And so I think it's really important maybe for people to see good ways that it's used or how it's being used. And that starts by kind of talking about it more and being really clear as to like, this is what it's doing, even if it's just for an educational purpose.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is creating spaces where young people, or maybe not young people, the people who support them, can be really clear about how they're using AI and create the opportunity to not just kind of create a lot of fear around AI, but for y'all to really share what are some of the ways in which your AI use is very positive, what are some of the ways in which you're noticing your AI use impacting you, and be able to kind of bring out that intuition that you all have around the ways in which you want to use AI intentionally in your own lives. Yeah, what else?
A couple of thoughts. One, I'm certainly a dinosaur. And so, like, doing the thing with Grok where it gives you voice back, like, I am disgusted by that. Like, I do not want my damn car talking to me. That said, I use it a lot. What is also on my mind is just the notion of trauma, and that I am in a space where so many of the children who we serve have been traumatized by adults. And so kids don't ever want to feel judged. They don't ever want, and so because of that, are they more vulnerable to go into AI and find this kind, affirming, voice that mirrors back what you said, and then find themselves more vulnerable to go too far in. And so wondering, just this wondering about the next level of research is, okay, for folks who have been traumatized, are they more vulnerable to the dark side of this? And then what we would need to do in the relationships that we have as adults to pull them out of that, especially in light of the fact that many of them don't trust adults who traumatize them.
Yes, this has me thinking a lot about like the spaces in which young people can actually talk to each other around AI. So I just hosted a series of roundtables on this at Duke, and it was really hard to get young people to even open up about the ways in which they use AI for emotional and personal purposes, because it feels very vulnerable and very open to judgment. And so that question that I hear you asking around, specifically for young people who have a history of trauma, how would this affect them differently than other young people? Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Just piggybacking off of that, it made me think of a conversation we had earlier when we were talking about the cards around some use ability to discern like what is fact, right? That's coming from AI versus like what's opinion. They may feel like going to a person like, oh, that's opinion based, and like this AI might be able to be more factual. We know that's not the case, right? We've seen that. We've seen professionals literally be fired, right? Because of using AI without checking it. And so how are we teaching you to do that, right? And to come to another point of reference and not just fully rely on what they're hearing from AI.
Awesome. So I hear that last point is a question that you're sitting with around how to teach young people to be more discerning around the ways in which they're using AI, but then also how to bring out their own intuition around that discernment as well. Yeah.
Did you need to?
Yeah, and then we'll go.
I was thinking about, I think you've raised this a couple different ways, but the provocation that's sticking with me is, when is this in service of my growth and development, and when is it a threat to that? I think those were your words. And I'm actually wondering, I have an 11-year-old who I've shared would probably go much further into this if I would allow the permissions for it. So I'm just going to try like putting this on my refrigerator and letting him start to investigate it and say, what do you think about when it would be in service of, or when do you think it would be a threat to your own growth and development, and like using this type of investigation as a tool towards setting boundaries. And I'm wondering what would happen if kids were using AI and we were to say, tell your AI to tell you when it's starting to get into a place where it might be not in service of your growth and development anymore. And if you could train your AI to say, I think it's time for you to turn to a human, or this is really something that you should talk to so-and-so about, or whatever.
Yeah, thank you so much for that sharing. So what I hear is, giving young people the tools to, again, build that discernment in a lot of different ways. So before I leave you with a big thank you for coming to our workshop today, I want to leave you with one last quote. This is from the great Dumbledore, to start and end with Harry Potter. It is our choices, Harry, that show us what we truly are. Just be more aware of your choices as you leave this room today. What are some choices that you can make to help young people feel like they can open up about the ways that in which they use AI in their life in a way that's precise, and then helps them bring that future of AI closer to them in the way in which they want it to show up. So thank you so much today.